Fox News Alert. Earlier in the hour, we told you about a controversial new ad from the National Rifle Association. It criticizes President Obama for accepting armed protection for his daughters at school when Mr. Obama recently questioned the need for using police to step up security at schools across the country. Earlier today, the White House Press Secretary Jay Carney called that ad repugnant and cowardly. Here's some of the ad, which is currently running on the cable network, the Sportsman Channel.
Are the president's kids more important than yours? Then why is he skeptical about putting armed security in our schools when his kids are protected by armed guards at their school? Mr. Obama demands the wealthy pay their fair share of taxes, but he's just another elitist hypocrite when it comes to a fair share of security. Protection for their kids and gun-free zones for ours.
Joining me now, Monica Crowley, radio talk show host, and Julie Roginsky, a former political advisor to New Jersey Democratic Senator Frank Lautenberg. Both are Fox News contributors. So, you know, we were on the air yesterday when it broke that the president was going to be using children in his announcement today, and we had an impassioned discussion about whether the use of children to make a political point on an issue as controversial as this is appropriate. We got a mix of opinions. What about this? Now you have the other side doing it in a different way, but doing it clearly.
Anytime you use children to make a political point, it's always a very dicey proposition, and you have to be really careful about doing it on either side, I think. That being said, this president has used his daughters in campaign appearances. He used a beautiful child when he was signing ObamaCare, the health care bill. So he has been known to use children for political props when it suits his purposes. In this case today, the use of these children in the audience as he was making the announcements on gun control, I find particularly inappropriate because you are dealing with an issue that involves violence. Healthcare bill didn't involve violence per se. This actually does. So the use of those children, I think, went over the line. The point I think that the NRA was making, and again, you have to be very, very, very careful, especially when you're talking about the president's children. But the bigger point that they're trying to make here is that the president's children do not go to school in a gun-free zone. They are protected. They have Secret Service
They're accusing him of hypocrisy.
And that's totally fine. But yes, what it's actually saying is his children are more worthy of gun protection than yours.
Is that, I mean, the thing is, obviously, the president's children are in a special circumstance. They are under threat at all times, sadly, because they are the children of the President of the United States. There's a reason why they have 24/7 Secret Service protection, and it's something that we in the media don't often highlight, and we tend to stay away from, and I don't know that we should be discussing the security situation of the Obama girls. But now we are, because this ad put it, and I understand the point they're trying to make, Julie, but is it appropriate to talk about the security that these two little girls have?
No, and this should not be a partisan issue. The NRA was reprehensible to do this. If this were the Bush girls or Chelsea Clinton, I would have said the same thing. There's no excuse to be dragging little Sasha and little Malia, who are minors, who did not ask, by the way, to be the president's daughters.
Who are in a special circumstance.
Who are in a special circumstance because they are under threat. And if I certainly don't know what the situation is with the Secret Service, but I suspect there are threats against them on a daily basis because of who they are.
Risk of kidnapping, etc.
Exactly right. And so to drag them into this and to discuss their school, and inevitably this leads to which school do they attend. So, you know, it's public where they go to school, but now we're talking about it.
They just start thinking about it.
You know, and this is leading us down into a slippery, horrible slope, which I believe will probably endanger those girls more than they're endangered already, and it's reprehensible. The NRA should pull that ad. Frankly, I wish we would stop talking about it because it is just inexcusable to have done this.
And it's like, I mean, I don't know. You tell me whether they ceded their own opportunity to claim the moral high ground. I mean, I don't know. But, you know, President Obama using those children today was a controversial thing.
Right.
And I asked one of the panelists yesterday, what if a Republican president went out there with a bunch of children and said, these are children like the ones who could have been born if they hadn't been aborted by all the women out there who took advantage of Roe versus Wade. I'm doing this to protect the children. It's fair for me to use children because I'm trying to protect children. You know, that's how the White House feels about the use of children today. it would be extremely controversial. And
there would be a huge uproar.
And what of what he did?
The Republican president who was pro-life had done something like that. Again, anytime you put children in a political context, you're really sort of playing with fire. Now, these children today actually wrote to the president. They had their parents' approval.
But that's a different issue. The parents' decision and the parents' decision to let their children be a part of it is a different issue than whether the president of the United States should have agreed to that.
Here's why it's so cynical to be using children in this context. Number one, because of the violence part of the gun control debate, which is what we're talking about. But secondly, because it puts the opponents of any of these gun control measures in a very difficult box. I understand why the president did it, and some could say he was very smart to do it, but it's very tough, if not impossible, to argue against children. You saw those kids today. They're beautiful, angelic children, not unlike the ones who were gunned down in the Newtown massacre. Very difficult to argue against children. That's why they were used, but I find that use of kids really exploitative.
What do you make of the presidency? And pick up on my question about if a Republican had used children to make a pro-life point.
You know, I'm not a fan of using kids, and actually Monica and I agree on this. Look, it's up to their parents to figure out whether to use them or not. That's one issue.
And then there's
another.
If
it were my child, I'm not so sure that I'd let him stand up there with anybody, especially when we're talking about guns. You know, I'm not comfortable with it as a mother. I can't speak to whether their parents are comfortable with it. What I do have to say, though, is the NRA, I think, to your earlier point, really did overplay their hand. They have a lot of allies on the Democratic side, Harry Reid, John Tester, others who are sympathetic to the NRA's cause. What they did today, I think, is so overplay their hand by using the Obama girls as bait, for lack of a better word, that they are now probably going to alienate a lot of supporters on the Democratic side that probably would have been with them before.
And can I say this? If you read the blogs, that argument that they're making is not new. Right, you've seen that out there. Like, why the president's family, they get gun protection, and why can't my family get gun protection, even, you know, if they're not under, I know they're not under special threat, but now all children are under threat in the wake of Newtown is the argument. So who is he to tell me I can't have it? But it's one thing for bloggers to talk about it, and it's another thing for the NRA, a hugely powerful group, to come out with an ad like that.
I think their most powerful line in the ad, though, was calling the president an elitist hypocrite.
Not just him. David Gregory was in there. I don't know. There's a whole collection of people in there. It was sort of a random collection.
And that is a powerful line, because if you set aside the use of the Obama girls, and that is debatable, but the bigger point here is that so many of these people who are arguing for stricter gun control, they all have their own either private security, whether you're talking about the president, and I'm not taking away their right. Obviously, the president needs security. Obviously, his family does as well. But what we're arguing for is law-abiding citizens to be able to continue to have the right and the freedom protected under the Second Amendment. And so when there's hypocrisy here, whether it's a Hollywood celebrity or a leftist politician or the president arguing to you that you can't, or that those rights should be curtailed, there is a huge element of hypocrisy, and I think that's what the NRA is
nobody's taking away anybody's right to bear arms, first and foremost. Secondly, if you look at what the president...
But there are gun-free zones around schools.
Well, but if you look at what the president proposed today, he's actually allocating or trying to allocate money to schools for security.
He said school resource officer.
Well, not just school resource officers, more police officers as well, if schools want them, if schools request them. Now, I frankly don't want my child going to school with guns, but that's my decision to send him to that school. So, look, the NRA, in addition to everything else, is making an erroneous and kind of specious argument.
All right. Thank you both.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
You bet.
Well, new question.